Who are the best picks for the Buccaneers at pick 19? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It's a mock draft Monday, so you know we are going to have a mock draft coming up for you a little bit later. But let's start things off with some of the best fits for the Buccaneers at pick 19. What I want to do here is give you some of the top players that have a realistic chance of being there for the Bucs when they're on the clock in the first round. And I'm going to look at all three levels of defense. I am not looking at offense at all here at 19. I don't think the Bucs are either, but Todd Bowles did talk about that a little bit. I'm going to talk about that on tomorrow's episode, but this way you all have some names in mind no matter what the situation is. And honestly, the reason I'm doing it this way is because there is nothing even close to resembling a consensus on what position the Bucs are going to go with. Could be an edge, could be an off-ball linebacker, could be a corner, could be a safety. You know, they could even go defensive line and then make Logan Hall the first guy off the bench in a rotation. So let's start up front with my top two fits in the first level of the defense, starting with Boston College edge rusher Donovan Eziraku. So 6'2", 250, Eziraku was a monster last season, finishing as the 17th ranked edge rusher out of a possible 869. He is great in run defense. He is great at pass rush. He is outstanding in pass rush win rate. He finished with 14 sacks last season, which is more than he had in 2022 and 2023 combined. For some reason, that might be, or for some people, not reason, but people, that might be a red flag that he had an outlier season this year going into the draft. To me, it shows the growth that he had from the start of his college career to the end of it. Eziraku has a RAS score of 8.12, which is solid, but not quite elite. And for those that have not heard me talk about RAS scores on this show before, I'll continue to talk about them leading up to the draft. I'm especially going to talk about them throughout the draft here in a couple of weeks. But RAS score is raw athletic score, where they compile a bunch of different metrics, a lot of the measurements from the combine, and compile that into a score from 0 to 10.0. So the biggest knock on Eziraku was his size. He's a little bit small for an NFL edge rusher, but his shuttle and three-cone times were considered elite, while his vertical and broad jump were considered good. The questions around him are whether or not he has the strength to hold up at the NFL level. His speed and quickness are his biggest assets, but in the NFL, you cannot win based strictly off your speed as an edge rusher. You have to have that strength to power through offensive tackles. You have to develop an arsenal of pass rush moves in order to win at the line of scrimmage. The question is whether or not the Bucs believe he has those attributes and natural abilities that they can develop into a top-tier pass rusher, because what you don't want him to do is be essentially the second coming of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, right? You don't want to burn a first-round pick on a guy that maxes out at about 3 or 4 sacks a season. That's not what you want to see. That brings me to my second fit at the edge position, James Pierce Jr. I talked about him a few shows ago, and there are those character concerns floating around. Again, I can't find anything that warrants the kind of drop that he's having in mock drafts and on big boards, but I am also not privy to the conversations that teams are having with him behind closed doors. I still maintain that someone with his talent, if the character concerns are true, is worth the risk when you have the leadership and the culture that the Bucs do inside that locker room. He would not be a fit in all 32 locker rooms. You have to have the foundation there to be able to, absorb the character concerns and get him to kind of pivot away from the path that he's going down. Again, if those character concerns are true. Now, Pierce finished as the 27th ranked edge defender last season out of 869. The year before, he finished 12th out of 840. And here's kind of the difference between Pierce and Ezeraku. Pierce was in the top 30 back-to-back years. Ezeraku was 17th last year, but 114th in 2023. The next big difference is the size. Pierce is 6'5", 250, 8 sacks last season, 13 in 2023, 43 quarterback hurries last year. That's more than 3 per game. Again, good in run defense, good in pass rush, but a pass rush win rate of 23%. That is elite. That's basically one win in every 4 snaps that he is, he's winning at the line of scrimmage. But here's the thing. Pierce has everything that you need in this rotation, but if his head is on straight, his ceiling is an all-pro. This is a consistent double-digit sack guy in the NFL. He got a RAS score of 9.40. That ranks 122nd among all defensive ends graded since 1987. His biggest knocks on him were his weight, which is a little bit light for his size, and then his vertical jump. But here's where the elite comes in, the speed. I know people make a big deal about the 40-yard dash. Pierce's 40 was great. He ran a 4.47. That's outstanding. But I'm not worried about the 40 time. Not for the edge rushers. I'm worried about the 10-yard split. That's where you see the explosiveness, and that's what you need to look at when you're evaluating edge rushers. It's not the full 40, it's the 10-yard split. And James Pierce Jr. had a 1.56. That's 1.5 seconds. That's the difference between a comfortable pocket and a sack, or at the very least, a hurry and a throwaway or a forced incompletion. If the Bucs want to fortify their edge rotation in the first round, these are the 2 guys that I am looking for. At least one, maybe both, are going to be sitting there. And I think Ezeraku is the safer option, but Pierce is the guy that you take that risk on because his ceiling is just so high. If you hit, that is a jackpot. If you miss, well, they kind of missed on Devin White. He had the one explosive season, the incredible playoff run. If you miss on this, you don't pick up the 5th-year option, or you pick up the 5th-year option and then let him walk in free agency. But I think, is the juice worth the squeeze with James Pierce Jr.? If that's what the Bucs are looking for at 19, is to finish rounding out their edge rush rotation, I think he's certainly worth a very, very serious look. But what about the other 2 levels of the defense and the best fits there? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Going into the next level of the defense, to me, there's only one option, and it's Jahad Campbell. Now, you could put Jalen Walker in this category, but he's more of a hybrid. He can line up inside and outside in Bowles' defense. So he's more of that chess piece that Todd Bowles talked about a lot last offseason than he is a pure off-ball linebacker or edge rusher. But I love the idea of Campbell at 19. And a lot of people don't like taking linebacker this high. But if you can get a guy that's going to be the Levante of this defense for the next decade, you pull the trigger. He is the number one player at his position. And you all know how I keep talking about the elite talent in this draft not being as deep, but the really, really good talent is, right? I've talked about the elite talent being like 10 to 12 guys. After that, you have a clump of the next 100 that are all basically in the same tier. Campbell, he's among those 10 to 12 truly elite players in this draft, and you can get him at pick 19. 6'3", 245, run defense is outstanding, pass rush is solid, coverage is good, and what he currently lacks, he can begin to learn and develop from one of the best linebackers of the last decade and the second best linebacker in the history of this franchise. This is a guy that can do anything that you want him to do. He can blitz, he can cover, he's got sideline to sideline speed, he can track down the ball carrier. This is a total package player. A RAS score of 9.87. That is good for 41st out of 3,184 linebackers graded since 1987. He is off the charts. A 4.52 40 with a 1.58 10-yard split. So he's got the speed that you want from a blitzer, but he's got the closing speed in a guy that you would want in run defense. The knock on him in his RAS score is his weight, which they have listed at 235. Now, some other places have him listed at 245, but Campbell is coming off of that torn labrum in his shoulder and will likely miss rookie minicamp and OTAs, but he would be good to go by training camp. That could be a little bit of an explanation for the drop in weight since he played, but you're not drafting Jahad Campbell for OTAs and rookie minicamp. You're drafting him for a minimum of the next 5 years. There is no hesitation whatsoever on my part to take him at 19 if he is sitting there. As far as the third level, let's talk about a corner. Let's talk about a safety. Safety seems to be popular among mock drafters lately, and I do think the fit of Malachi Starks is solid for the Buccaneers. While I would prefer to not take a safety, I can't be mad at the idea of Starks joining this defense. Again, this is one of the elite players in the draft and at his position, but because of his position, much like Jahad Campbell, he's going to fall farther than he should. And there are going to be players that are not elite that get taken ahead of him. Now, I say all that, and I talk about how Starks is elite, but his RAS score is not good. He got a 5.29, essentially saying, that he's small and that his agility tested poorly. Speed was considered good with a 4.5 40. But this is why Nick Emenwari's stock is rising rapidly. Emenwari got a perfect 10.0 RAS score. All of a sudden, he leaps into the conversation of first-round pick and the first safety off the board. But when you take a look at Starks, as far as when he played versus just the measurables, he is solid in coverage. He is already elite against the run, and he's incredibly intelligent. That is a prerequisite to play in Todd Bowles' defense. His football IQ and his reaction speed make him a very special player. He's also versatile and has spent time as a free safety, a strong safety, and a slot corner, which means he can line up in all different kinds of positions in this defense. And all of that is going to help him under Todd Bowles. 6 interceptions, 17 passes defense, a national champion, an All-American. This kid would be a really, really good addition to the defense, despite my hesitation to take safety in the first round. Then at corner, I'm looking at Jahdae Barron, which goes against everything that I have said about corners and the Buccaneers on this show. Barron is only 5'11". That typically disqualifies you from being selected to play in a Todd Bowles defense. But Barron is special. He is an outlier that I think the Bucs would bring in. We know Todd Bowles likes his big, lengthy corners, but Barron is not that guy. However, there's, you have all the hype around Travis Hunter. You have all the hype around Will Johnson, but Barron was ranked 3rd out of 848 corners that played last season. He had 10 forced incompletions last year. While he's good at man coverage, he excels to an elite level in zone. And that's what Bowles runs far more often. 5 interceptions last year, a passer rating allowed of 34.2 when targeted. Yes, you heard that right. 34.2. That is a lower passer rating when he was targeted than if a quarterback just threw the ball away. He is another one that I put in that elite talent category. I'm not sure if it's his size or what that has him beginning to fall in some of these mock drafts, but all of a sudden, Barron is a player who was sitting there for the Bucs at pick 19. He had a RAS score of 8.62. That is 380th out of 2,752 corners graded since 1987, but he was considered good across the board. Size, explosion, agility, except for speed. That's where he was considered great. A 4.39 40-yard dash for Jahdae Barron, and this guy has that closing speed that you want. He is not going to get beat on a deep ball. He has the recovery speed, the recovery intelligence and agility that this dude isn't giving up the deep ball. So to recap, my top fits for the Buccaneers of players that have a realistic chance of being there at 19, because obviously I can talk about how, Abdul Carter is a great fit for the Bucs. Well, yeah, of course he is. He's a generational edge rusher, but he's not going to be there at 19, right? So, that kind of thing I'm leaving off my board. But realistic players that could be there at 19, my top fits are Donovan Ezeraku and James Pierce Jr. at the edge rush position. Jahad Campbell at linebacker, though I think Jalen Walker is in the conversation, although I don't really have a spot for him because he is that hybrid player. And then safety Malachi Starks and quarterback Jahdae Barron. But what am I going to do in this week's mock draft? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, in my case, youth sports, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL, for half off your first year. Wrapping things up here on a Mock Draft Monday edition of Locked On Bucs, and let's dive into one this week. I'm going to allow for trades in this one. I'm just not going to initiate any. That said, if one pops up that I like for the Bucs, I'll go ahead and pull the trigger. So let's get started with round one. So Campbell, Starks, Barron, Ezeraku, all off the board. And we have one team interested in a trade. That's Washington. So that would involve me sliding back 10 spots. And with the players available, that might be a little tough. James Pierce Jr. is there. I talked about how much I like him as a fit with the Bucs. You have Siobhan Revel, the cornerback there. Shamar Stewart is there. Jalen Walker, Michael Williams. So moving back 10 spots and picking up pick 61 in the process is risky, but I like taking the gamble there. I like getting the extra second round pick in this particular draft. So I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to make the trade with Washington and slide back to pick 29 in the first round. But then, of course, Pierce goes one pick before me to the Detroit Lions. The Commanders moved up to 19 to get Shamar Stewart. Jalen Walker went 23rd to Green Bay. Michael Williams went 24 to the Vikings. So out of the players that I really liked at 19, that basically leaves Siobhan Revel. Then you have Nick Scourton, the edge rusher from A&M. Xavier Watts is among the best players available at positions that the Bucs need. I do think Xavier Watts has the chance to sneak into the back end of the first round, depending on how some of these things shake out. But I'm going to go with Siobhan Revel here, the 6'3" corner. He had a season cut short with an ACL tear. So this is a risk. This is a gamble. But the measurables for Revel, the play that we saw from him before the ACL tear over the course of the last two seasons was absolutely outstanding. I think this is a guy that is a first round no doubter if he doesn't go down with injury last year. Speaking of guys that are no doubt first rounders, if they don't go down to injury, we get to pick 53, and my guy Benjamin Morrison is staring me right in the face. Can't take him here. That completely stinks. But Carson Schwessinger and Demetrius Knight are the linebackers sitting there. You have Jack Sawyer and Jared Ivey there at edge rusher. I'm back on the clock again in 8 picks. So I'm going to take, to me, the best player available, and that is Carson Schwessinger from UCLA. He's more of the blitzing linebacker, so that complements Levante David in this defense perfectly for this coming season. He's not going to be the Levante replacement down the road. He certainly upgrades the position group, but that means that we do not have the replacement for Levante moving into 2026 if Levante retires, like we would if Jahad Campbell had been there at pick 19. At 61, Morrison is still sitting there taunting me. That's getting really upsetting, but I'm not falling for the emotional trap here. I'm not going to pick a guy just because I like him so much. I need to take a look at what we've already done, what the Bucs need. Shamar Turner is there, the defensive lineman from A&M. But this is a bonus pick. And I'm going to get another weapon for Baker Mayfield. Trey Palmer has not been the guy that the Bucs could rely on as a receiver. And I have a 6'4" receiver that runs a 4.47 40 and got a RAS score of 9.63 sitting here. 39-inch vertical. He's coming off of a season with 87 receptions for 1,185 yards and 9 touchdowns. I'm taking Iowa State receiver Jaden Higgins to add to this receiver group, which means Baker Mayfield now has Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, and Jaden Higgins. That is phenomenal for the Buccaneers offense. Now we've reached the third round, pick 84. We have a corner, we have a linebacker, we have a receiver. Jordan Birch, the edge rusher from Oregon, is sitting there. Defensive lineman Joshua Farmer is there. Penn State safety Kevin Winston Jr. is there. And Birch has a lot of work to do in run defense, but his pass rush is fantastic. He has a 15.7% pass rush win rate coming off of a 10-sack season for the Ducks. He would be rotational. He would only be coming in passing situations during his rookie year. Give him some time to develop while getting game experience, but he's got some really good tools and attributes to start developing the rest of his game. I'm taking Jordan Birch here, the edge rusher out of Oregon. Now a long wait until pick 121 in the fourth. There's some interesting names here for the Bucs. Trevor Etienne is here. He could round out the running back room. A pair of safeties, Jonas Sanker from Virginia and Billy Bowman Jr. from Oklahoma. And it's really a close call between these two safeties. There's a lot of similarities, but the deal breaker for me is the missed tackles rate from Bowman. Over 21%. 1 in 5 opportunities for Bowman has resulted in a missed tackle. That is not what you want from your last line of defense. That is not what you want in special teams. I need more of a sure tackler than that on the back end. I'm going to go with Jonas Sanker, the safety from Virginia. Back on the clock at 157, and we're looking for depth. We're looking for special teams. Pat Bryant, my dude from Illinois, the receiver, is there. We already got Higgins. We don't need to take Bryant here, but shout out to the Commanders for giving me pick 61 so that we could get Jaden Higgins. Trevor Etienne, though, the Georgia running back, is still available. He was one of the best players available with my last pick. The Bucs have got to add someone to the running back room to give them a little bit of extra depth, especially with some of the injuries that we saw throughout the season. Etienne can also help on kick returns. That's not something that I see Bucky Irving doing this season. The value here, too good to pass up. I'm taking Trevor Etienne to join the Buccaneers. And then an agonizing wait until the 7th round when the Bucs pick at 235. Some of the options here, a lot of receivers, a lot of running backs. Dean Clark, the safety from Fresno State, is there. Bo Collins, the receiver from Notre Dame. Malachi Moore, the safety from Alabama. Jalen Walker, the linebacker from Indiana. But I'm going to go with Joshua Gray, a guard from Oregon State, 6'4", 310. This is a draft and develop guy that converted from left tackle to left guard. The Bucs also need someone that can be that swing lineman. His experience helps the ability to cross-train him and make him a depth piece across the entire offensive line. He's a monster in run blocking, but he has a lot to, he leaves a lot to be desired in pass blocking. This isn't a guy I would expect to see on the field at all his rookie season. If he does come in, then things have gone horribly wrong and the Bucs season is tanking anyway, because that would mean that there was a host of injuries to the starting offensive lineman. But I like him as a solid developmental piece. So to recap, we trade out of 19 to pick 29, take Siobhan Revel, and get pick 61 from the Washington Commanders. In the second round, we get linebacker Carson Schlesinger, and then with that extra pick, we get wide receiver Jaden Higgins. In the third, Oregon edge rusher Jordan Birch. In the fourth round, Virginia safety Jonas Sanker. In the fifth round, Georgia running back Trevor Etienne. And then in the seventh, Oregon State offensive lineman Joshua Gray. PFF gave me an A for the draft. The selection of Siobhan Revel got a B+. Joshua Gray got a C. All the other picks were listed as A's. Honestly, not my best mock, I don't think. In hindsight, I think I would have rather stayed at 19, taken James Pierce, and then grabbed Morrison in the second, but I don't think this was an overall bad draft. It addressed a lot of needs, got that extra pick to continue making one of the best receiving groups in the entire league. And according to PFF's rankings, I got 4 of the top 100 players and 6 of the top 125. I'm going to take that any day of the week. That is a lot of value falling to the Bucs and being able to take advantage. All of that said, let this mock be a cautionary tale. I know I've said over and over that I am team trade back, but sometimes trading back can backfire and blow up in your face when players that you thought would slide to you don't. That's the risk. It's that whole a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush kind of thing. So let me know what you guys think of this mock draft in the comment section or on Twitter. Of course, you can follow there at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to support the show, become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes, or leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.